This video is covering the midterm process and the paperwork that accompanies the midterm process. There are two different pieces of paperwork to be completed by you for midterm. These can be found in SCD 252 on Canvas under Modules and then Midterm and Final Documents. If you look at the graphic to the right, you see that this is a screenshot directly taken from SCD 252 in Modules under the Midterm and Final Documents module. The first piece under that module is the Framework for Teaching at a Glance. This will be a good resource for you when you are completing your midterm evaluation of instructional practices. In the Framework for Teaching at a Glance, each domain and indicator is listed, along with some pieces of which are being looked for in each indicator. This can help you in your midterm when you are looking for pieces of evidence for each indicator in the midterm. The next document is the Midterm Rubric Evaluation of Instructional Practices. You can see in the title it also mentions Final. You are going to be using the same document for midterm and final, where in midterm you are going to highlight under whichever area you think that you are fitting at the time, either significant improvement needed, emerging, or proficient, and then you will fill in evidence where it says midterm evidence. There is also a column that says final evidence, where at the end of the semester, you will highlight in a different color in one of the areas, either significant improvement needed, emerging, or proficient. And then you will list your final evidence in that box. So this is why it says midterm and final rubric evaluation of instructional practices. The next document is midterm goals. This is an individual professional development plan, which I will get into in the coming slides. The next piece is this midterm PowerPoint. This is not narrated in this section. This is just the actual PowerPoint that you are seeing in this video. And then you will see there are two assignments. The first one is midterm documents. This is where you will submit your midterm documents so that your supervisor has access to them. And then the last is final documents, where you will do the same exact thing at the end of the semester so that your supervisor has access to your final documents. First, let's talk about the Evaluation of Instructional Practices rubric. This is the first piece of paperwork that you will be submitting for your midterm. This is based very closely off of the Danielson Framework for Teaching. Both you and your CT will complete individually. So you will each have your own document that looks exactly the same that you will be reflecting on your performance at your site thus far. So you will reflect on your performance and your CT will reflect on your performance as well, but it will be done on separate documents. Your supervisor will determine when your midterm visit is and when you will share your rubric along with your CT's rubric. As you'll recall from the previous slide, you will be submitting those on SCD 252 under the Midterm and Final Documents module where it says Midterm Documents. When you are completing the Evaluation of Instructional Practices rubric, you will highlight the verbiage that you feel describes your performance and then cite evidence in the box that says Midterm Evidence. You can rate yourself in between categories. So for example, you might highlight some language in emerging, but then you might also see some language in proficient that you feel exemplifies your performance as well. You may highlight the little bit of language in emerging that you find is exemplifying what you are doing, and then the same thing in proficient. If we look at the graphic to the bottom right, you will see that this is actually a small piece of the Evaluation of Instructional Practices rubric. This is from Domain 1, Planning and Preparation, Indicator 1A, Demonstrating Knowledge of Content and Pedagogy. You will see that there are 4 categories, but only 3 have headings. So the first is Significant Improvement Needed, the next is Emerging, the next is Proficient, and then there's a column that doesn't have a heading. That is typically the exemplary column. You can see though that it does not have a heading and that it is sort of grayed out. This is because we are not expecting anybody to be in the exemplary column. We are really just looking for ratings in either significant improvement needed, emerging, or proficient. As I stated before, you will rate yourself in one of these columns, or if you're seeing verbiage from both that applies, you can highlight the pieces of verbiage from each column that you feel applies to you. Once you've read the verbiage and you decide where you fall, then you will go down below and you can see that there is a section that says midterm evidence. You'll see that there's a bullet point there. This is really just meaning to be bullet points in midterm evidence. You do not need to be writing long paragraphs. So in terms of demonstrating knowledge of content and pedagogy, you could go up to the graphic that is above the evaluation of instructional practices rubric. This is from the Framework for Teaching, and this is that first piece of documentation that is uploaded on the midterm and final documents module. This is a very helpful document for you when you are thinking of evidence, when you're wanting to consider which category you think you fall under. You can look at this piece of paperwork and it will give you some ideas of what is being looked for specific domains and for the specific indicators. So once you have looked at those pieces and you have read the verbiage in either significant improvement needed, emerging, or proficient, and you've decided where you fall, then you will bullet out your midterm evidence. So for something like 1A, demonstrating knowledge of content and pedagogy, you might want to evidence all of the pieces that you have demonstrated thus far on how you are knowledgeable about the content that you're teaching and the pedagogy. So you might want to be talking about the scope and sequence, or demonstrating your knowledge of the content with different strategies that you have been teaching. So those would be things that you would be listing under your midterm evidence. Again, it really just needs to be bullet points. It does not need to be long paragraphs. It just needs to evidence how you have been working on demonstrating your knowledge of content and pedagogy and how you've been evidencing that. You will complete this process for all of the indicators that are included on the Evaluation of Instructional Practices rubric. You will notice that some indicators are not present, so you only need to complete it on the indicators that are present. The last document in the midterm process is the Individual Professional Development Plan. This is a growth plan that is developed by you in consideration of the feedback that you have received from your CT and your supervisor. There are 4 questions at the beginning of the document that you will respond to with evidence to support your responses. These questions involve how did you become familiar with the content? How did you become familiar with your students? So you'll respond to the question, and then you'll just give a piece or 2 of evidence to support your responses. And your evidence does not have to be that in-depth. It could just be that you took the curriculum home and you read up on it. Or maybe if you're teaching some sort of complicated or complex math strategy, you went home, you worked on it, you watched YouTube videos to try to teach yourself to become more well-versed in it. It doesn't have to be, that you went to a professional development conference. It could also be having conversations with your cooperating teacher or with support professionals in the room. It does not have to be something that is very complex. You will then also create 2 to 3 goals for yourself to target for the remainder of the semester. On the page, it has the goal statement, and then it has your action plan. So what are you going to do to try to meet this goal by the end of the semester? What are the steps you're going to take? So maybe one of your goals is to improve in behavior management. What are some action steps that you will take in order to improve your behavior management strategies across the semester? And then you're also going to list any resources that you will be using across the semester to help meet this goal. So for thinking about this behavior management goal that you might have for yourself, maybe one of your action steps is, creating some sort of behavior management plan for the group that you're teaching if there isn't already a classroom management system in your room. Or maybe you need to set reminders out for yourself to do the classroom management strategies that are already in place. Maybe you're having trouble remembering to do that while you're teaching your lesson. So you might set reminders or create a plan. Those are action steps that you might be doing. And then resources that you might be using. So if you are setting reminders for yourself, maybe your resource is like something buzzes on your watch, or maybe you're setting a timer for yourself, or maybe you're putting a Post-it note up somewhere to remind yourself of that. What are you doing what resources are you using in order to help to meet this goal? You will discuss this paperwork with your supervisor, and this will be candidate led. So when you are having your midterm meeting, you will discuss the paperwork. So you will discuss the goals that you have set for yourself. The goals really probably will come from some feedback that you've received by your CT or your supervisor, but they also could be something that you have kind of self-identified that maybe is an area that you want to improve on, and that is okay too. Your supervisor might suggest a goal for you either prior to completing the paperwork, or as you're meeting, they might say, why don't you, it's probably a good idea that you create a goal for time management, or maybe you want to create a goal for bringing in more and different resources into your plans, into your lessons. So it's not unusual for a supervisor to suggest a goal for you as well. So this is the midterm process. Thank you for listening, and please let us know if you have any questions.